So here's something inspiring. IKEA once did an experiment where there were two plants that they got from their store and they placed them in a school with the same amount of exposure of sunlight, same amount of water being poured and being, to nourish the plant. But the two different things that happened here is that the one plant had a recorded positive reinforcement words like "you are great," "you are lovely," all of those good things that one can imagine, and the other, all negative, utterances. And the one, the kids were assigned as well to say positive things, and then the other, the kids were instructed in that particular school to say all bad things, almost to drive the idea of bullying and what that does and what the results of bullying and positive versus negative reinforcement happens. And so this experiment was to be done for about 30 days, and it turned out that the plant that was positively enforced survived, and it thrived, whereas the other plant, to its demise, it died. Now one would like, that's not true, come on, but it happened. And which really leads us to our topic today, that what do we validate about ourselves, and how do we resort to external validation more than anything? This topic has been something that has been in my mind, and I have been struggling, to be quite honest, to come up with it, because there's so many aspects to it and so many moving pieces around it, and I can't just come and speak about it as if it's something just haphazard, but it's something so important and vital that we almost overlook every single day of our lives, that it is that critical. A lot of people behave a certain way because of how they are validated and how they validate themselves. Psychologists actually say that a mother at the tender age of a child, if they do not validate their children are prone to grow up with lacking a sense of worth and not being emotionally aware. And that is so deep, because it clearly funnels and shows itself so many ways with how people behave, with how you behave towards yourself, how you behave towards others, and what you expect from others as opposed to what you actually expect from yourself. Now, internal validation, it is regarded as you honoring and acknowledging all your strengths and achievement internally before you are gratified by the people outside. Whereas the opposite is true, where you wait for people to acknowledge your strength and your achievements from the outside in. And what that does over time, it enables you as an individual to somehow being wholly dependent or solely dependent on what people say about you, think about you, and how they react towards you when you haven't put in the work to validate yourself. Now, what the scenario about the plants is, we can all be in the same environment, receiving the same things that we are getting, but based on what we actually say and the voice that we have internally can inevitably lead us to either thrive and survive or to our demise, where there's some things that just don't grow. And that is critical to look at and really establish. So I wrote a few questions just to tackle this, apart from before we get into most of the content that we will be talking about today, is that, are you the one who tells yourself that you're beautiful more than someone else does? Are you the one that tells yourself that you are great? Are you the one that tells yourself that you are worthy more than others? What do you like hearing about yourself? And what do you believe about yourself? And what is your truth? What do you believe is true about yourself? What do you believe isn't true about yourself? And does the truth overlap or overpower what others might determine your truth to be? Is your truth based on how you've evaluated yourself? And how can you change to make sure that you believe in yourself holistically and more? And of course, you think about these questions. And I think fundamentally, it's almost saying that if we can't be able to say and speak well of ourselves first before others do, then there's something that we need to get into. And obviously, there's a lot of dark sides to when you are not internally validated or not consistently validating yourself. Some people are anxious who are externally or lack validation. They're anxious, stressful, overly dependent on what others people think of them. They cannot make decisions on their own. They always in pursuit of overly compensating about their lives, because without them getting that validation, it leads them to be lonely. So that's another part. When you haven't validated yourself, you can't be lonely, which then jumps to your behaviors of how you don't stay in relationship. You hop from relationship to another because you can't be alone. You can't really be the person that takes a pause and sits on the things that you are looking at in your life, and therefore make a decision when you are well to say that this is what you would do or not do, because you need to be validated. You need to constantly be complimented, constantly be told you're beautiful, constantly being assured that you're the greatest, like Muhammad Ali, maybe. But whatever it is that we experience in terms of validation, it is to make you understand that none of us are perfect, and that you can't be a person that accepts everything and denies nothing. You can't be a person that finds a way to truly accept what everything happens to you in the way that it does, where you can't say no. You always want to say yes, because your behavior and your personality leads you to being a people pleaser at the expense of your own self, emotionally, financially, and otherwise. And that you need to draw back and really evaluate yourself in terms of what is really truly inspiring and what it is that you need to focus on yourself. And so it's really important, maybe just not looking further, is that really important to build an internal trust in yourself, an internal trust in what you do, and a high illumination of what it is that you've achieved. We're all not maybe where we want to be in life. We might not be in the position where we want to be, but there's good things around you, and there's so many things to look forward to. But we can't get there unless there's a level of validation that you bring within, as opposed to you waiting for people to give that to you. What are you giving yourself? There's a scenario that, or just analogy that I have, that you can't, it's like if you're a bank, a lot of people deposit money into it, and if it's an account, you deposit money and money grows in that account. And then when you spend it, you are withdrawing the money and it keeps depleting. But some people find themselves having more withdrawals versus deposits. So you can't really feed anybody. You can't pour out of an empty jar. And that's what happens when you constantly wait for validation, and those validations don't come to exist because nobody's pouring into you. neither are you doing the same, because you've been so dependent on what people pour into you that ultimately, when they don't deposit into you, there's nothing to withdraw and you are depleted. And that's essentially where it comes at the crux of you truly defining what it is that you want to do for yourself, and not wait for people to give you something that you can derive, one, from your creator, your God, to ensure that this is who you are. So to be able to get over various levels of validation is the self-dialogue. What do you speak to yourself about? If you're alone, what are you afraid of? Your fears and anxieties, I have believed that there are somehow tools and maps to direct you to what it is that you are afraid of. And maybe it's okay to approach them. And the more you approach them, the more ease you find with dealing with them. And therefore, it's very much the next step for you to become a better person and a better being. What are you saying to yourself? You know, we have the Gen Z now and everybody is validated by social media. If there are no likes, it's about them. It's, oh, how could they not like this? And so we expose ourselves to different places because we want to get that validation from people. But little do we put in the work to develop our personal selves, to become people who can enable us to become better. Another tool to becoming better is affirmations. As I've said, the self-dialogue. Muhammad Ali says, it is the repetition of affirmation that leads to belief. And once that belief becomes a deeper conviction, things begin to happen. We know Ali was the greatest, right? But one thing about him, he always called himself the greatest, though he had no titles. Yes, the record shows that he's won, titles or championships in 3 occasions every time but he lost some fights against Joe Frazier, etc. I'm a fan, so yeah. Then over and above, one thing about him is what he says about himself, though he doesn't have the external things that validate him all the time. He called himself the greatest when he didn't have the title before the Rumble in the Jungle, where he fought and got that world championship. But nonetheless, that is the secret. How do we translate to waking up in the morning, practically getting in front of the mirror and telling yourself, I'm confident, I'm beautiful, I'm smart, I'm great. And this is something that can transcend from, even if it's kids. I have nieces who I love dearly, and I've always told them and gave them affirmations that I'm blessed, I'm black, I'm smart, I'm great, so that whatever they identify themselves with, they don't see any negative connotation around it, but really accept it because that's truly who they are. And that is where it is. The more you speak and pour in good things, good attributes about yourself, the better it translates to become something more positive. So it's important. Just like those plants, everybody has a plant inside of them. But for that plant to grow and survive, it's what you pour in every single day. So yes, thank you very much, guys. This was our video. I believe I want to do more about validation. What are you struggling with? Maybe you can share. What are your struggles? What do you find yourself doing that seems to be too much because there's a lack of validation in you? Like there's nothing good that you see yourself or see about yourself. Though that might be not true, but that's what you experience in your life. And that's what we need to grapple with, that there's some good in you. You are great. You are worthy. You are smart. You are beautiful. You are capable. There's no one like you. We need you. And that is where we need to be focusing on, because we can't have a high suicide rate because the world is not validated. We can't have a high suicide rate because we are solely dependent on what people think about us, instead of us changing the narrative of what we actually say and think about ourselves. So friends, with all love and respect and everything great, you are great, you are worthy, you deserve every good thing coming your way. And that is the true validation that pour inside of you before you wait to pour in other people. Stay blessed, all love, peace.